You've suffered more than you realize. Maybe you think your life has been fine, that you've moved on from the hard moments, but the truth is, your mind is a clever archivist. It stores the pain you couldn't face, the losses you didn't want to name, the moments that would have broken you if you felt them fully. They're still there, living quietly under the surface, shaping how you see the world. And one day, often when you least expect it, they rise, not to punish you, but to ask, will you finally see me? Will you finally listen? Carl Jung believed these hidden layers of suffering are not mistakes in the system, they are the system. Your unconscious mind buries what your conscious mind cannot yet bear. But buried pain doesn't vanish, it transforms into shadows. Those shadows leak into your moods, your decisions, your relationships. Ever reacted too strongly to something small? Ever felt a wave of sadness with no clear cause? That's your hidden history speaking. And here's the paradox. To become whole, you must walk toward that voice, even if it trembles, even if it feels like walking into the dark. We all think we know the story of our suffering. We tell neat little versions to friends, to ourselves. That was hard, but I'm over it. But your psyche isn't bound by the tidy script you've written. Jung once said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. The things you think are just how you are, the restlessness, the mistrust, the endless pushing, may actually be echoes from an old wound. And the longer it hides, the more it shapes you without your consent. Here's the twist. Hidden suffering doesn't just come from trauma. It can come from dreams never chased, love never spoken, parts of yourself you've abandoned because the world told you they were wrong. These quiet griefs accumulate, and when they do, they press on you, subtly, like the weight of deep water. Jung called this the shadow, not because it's evil, but because it lives out of sight. And in that shadow, there's a strange truth. The pain you've avoided might also be the key to the life you've been searching for. Think about this. Your unconscious is patient. It will wait years, even decades, for the moment you are strong enough to face what you once could not. Maybe it shows up in dreams, or in the middle of an ordinary day when a scent or a song hits you like a wave. Maybe it's why you're restless at night, or why joy feels dulled. This is the hidden architecture of your mind, a blueprint you didn't design consciously. And yet, if you choose to look at it, you might find rooms you never knew existed. So here's my question for you. If you've suffered more than you realize, isn't it possible you're also stronger than you know? What if those invisible battles have already shaped you into someone far more capable than the person you remember being? Jung believed suffering could be transformed, not erased, but turned into wisdom. But transformation only comes when you stop running from the shadow and start inviting it in. Because somewhere inside the pain is a message, one that's been waiting for you to hear it. I am part of you, and I am ready to come home. Hidden suffering is tricky. It doesn't arrive with a label. It shows up as small decisions that steer your life in strange directions. The job you didn't take because something inside whispered you'd fail. The friendship you let fade because closeness felt unsafe. These choices seem harmless, even logical, until you realize they've been guided by a voice from years ago. Jung taught that the unconscious isn't silent, it speaks in subtle nudges. And if you never stop to question them, you might live an entire life written by a ghost you barely remember. Imagine a part of you trapped in time, still holding the fear or grief from when it first appeared. To the conscious mind, that moment is over. But to the unconscious, it's still happening. That's why certain triggers feel disproportionate. They aren't just about now, they're about then. Jung believed that bringing these moments into awareness is like freeing a prisoner. But here's the twist. Sometimes you are both the prisoner and the guard, holding yourself in place because you've forgotten where the key is. We often treat emotions like unwanted guests, ignoring them, hoping they'll leave if we don't make eye contact. But emotions are stubborn. They camp out in the psyche until acknowledged. Jung saw this in his patients. The pain they ignored became the pain that ruled them. And the first step toward change was always the same: to turn toward the feeling, however uncomfortable, and ask, "What are you trying to tell me?" The answer is rarely neat, but it is always honest, and honesty is the beginning of freedom. Some people think that to grow is to leave pain behind, but Jung knew that wholeness doesn't come from escape. It comes from integration. Integration means allowing the hurt, the shame, the regret to have a seat at the table without letting them run the meeting. Your past is not an enemy to defeat. It's a witness to be heard. And if you can hear it fully, you might discover it's been holding not just your suffering, but your deepest strengths all along. There's a strange kind of courage in sitting still with something painful. Our culture teaches us to fix, distract, or run. But the psyche heals in the quiet moments where nothing is fixed at all, only felt. Jung compared this to alchemy's black stage, the Negredo, where everything dissolves before something new can form. It's uncomfortable, even frightening. But if you can endure the stillness, you might see that the darkness isn't empty. It's fertile ground, quietly preparing the next version of you. So ask yourself, what have you been carrying that you've never really looked at? What memories do you keep in a locked drawer, convinced you're protecting yourself by keeping them shut away? Jung believed that unlocking that drawer is the work of a lifetime, but the key is already in your hand. The shadow is not there to destroy you. It's there to complete you. And the moment you dare to turn the key, you'll find that what you feared most has been waiting to become your ally. We are quick to label ourselves. I'm just bad at relationships, or I can't handle conflict. But what if those aren't fixed traits? What if they're echoes of old wounds disguised as personality? Jung warned that the things we accept as just the way I am might actually be the voice of the past still speaking. These voices limit us until we learn to question them. And when we do, something remarkable happens. The identity you thought was solid starts to shift, making room for a truer, freer version of yourself to emerge. Some suffering hides in plain sight, not as agony, but as numbness. It's the absence of joy, the dullness in moments that should move you. This quiet emptiness can be harder to notice than pain, because it feels like nothing at all. Yet Jung saw this as a signal that part of the self has withdrawn. Reclaiming it means listening for the faintest calls from deep inside. It means asking, where did I lose my spark? And more importantly, what would it take to welcome it home? Life will hand you moments that strip you down to your foundations. Jung believed these moments are not only inevitable, they are necessary. They break the old structures so something new can be built. In alchemy, this is the stage where the old form dissolves completely. It's disorienting, frightening, and sometimes lonely. But it is also the threshold of transformation. What you rebuild after such a collapse is different. It's not based on who you were told to be. It's based on who you truly are. One of Jung's most enduring ideas was that the shadow holds not just our fears, but our hidden gold, the talents, desires, and strengths we've buried to fit in. Sometimes we hide our light because it draws attention, and attention once felt unsafe. But ignoring your gifts is just another form of suffering. To claim them again, you must risk being seen. And that might feel dangerous at first, but it's the kind of danger that frees you, not the kind that binds you. Think of your psyche as a vast landscape. Some parts you know well, the sunny fields, the familiar paths. But beyond the edges are forests you've avoided, places that feel haunted. Jung would say that your greatest growth lies in exploring those unknown regions. The monsters you fear may turn out to be exiled parts of yourself. And the moment you step into that forest, you begin the journey from avoidance to wholeness, discovering not only who you are, but who you were always meant to be. Avoidance feels like safety, but it's a cage. You tell yourself you're protecting your heart, when in truth, you're keeping it from beating fully. Jung understood that safety and aliveness don't always live in the same place. To feel deeply, to risk hurt, is also to risk joy, love, and meaning. The heart wasn't built for a padded room. It was built to weather storms, to heal, to expand. And each time you step beyond avoidance, you prove to yourself that you can survive. And more than that, you can live. Transformation rarely looks heroic while it's happening. More often, it looks like confusion, even regression. But Jung taught that the psyche moves in spirals, revisiting from a higher vantage each time. You may think you're stuck, but you're circling upward, gathering insight with every pass. The climb is subtle, but real. And one day, you'll look back at the place you thought was rock bottom, and realize it was the foundation for the life you have now. Perhaps the hardest truth Jung offers is this: your suffering will not disappear on its own. It waits for you to meet it. But here's the gift. When you do, it changes shape. It becomes a teacher, a guide, even a source of strength. The shadow you feared becomes the ally you needed. And in that moment, you understand something profound. You have not been broken all this time. You have been in the making. Every fracture, every scar, every hidden hurt was part of your becoming. Healing begins the moment you stop hiding from your story and dare to read it aloud to yourself. Your voice may shake, but that trembling is the sound of chains loosening. The shadow you've avoided begins to soften. The instant you meet its eyes. It is not there to ruin you. It is not there to guarding the very parts of you that didn't survive in the open. Each page you turn in your own story is a step toward integration. Is a step reminder that even the darkest chapters still belong to the same book. The same book. The book of you. The shadow waits patiently, keeping safe the parts of you that once felt too dangerous to reveal. Jung saw this not as cruelty, but as protection. The psyche's way of storing what you weren't yet ready to carry. But as you grow, the shadow begins to feel heavy, not safe. It whispers through restlessness, through repeated mistakes, through the ache of something missing. That whisper is the invitation. The moment you stop treating it like an intruder and start treating it like an old friend is the moment you begin to heal. Every locked memory is a door. You may have spent years walking past it, convincing yourself it's better left shut. But the key has been in your pocket the whole time. Unlocking it doesn't mean drowning in the past. It means retrieving the pieces of yourself that have been waiting inside. Jung believed the unconscious is generous. It returns these memories in symbols, dreams, and sudden moments of recognition. Each one is a threshold, and the choice is always yours, to keep walking past or to finally step through. Avoidance feels like safety, but it's a cage. You tell yourself you're protecting your heart, when in truth, you're keeping it from beating fully. Jung understood that safety and aliveness don't always live in the same place. To feel deeply, to risk hurt, is also to risk joy, love, and meaning. The heart wasn't built for a padded room. It was built to weather storms, to heal, to expand. And each time you step beyond avoidance, you prove to yourself that you can survive. And more than that, you can live. Transformation rarely looks heroic while it's happening. More often, it looks like confusion, fatigue, even regression. But Jung taught that the psyche moves in spirals, revisiting old wounds from a higher vantage each time. You may think you're stuck, but you're circling upward, gathering insight with every pass. The climb is subtle, but real. And one day, you'll look back at the place you thought was rock bottom, and realize it was the foundation for the life you have now. Perhaps the hardest truth Jung offers is this: your suffering will not disappear on its own. It waits for you to meet it. But here's the gift. When you do, it changes shape. It becomes a teacher, a guide, even a source of strength. The shadow you feared becomes the ally you needed. And in that moment, you understand something profound. You have not been broken all this time. You have been in the making. Every fracture, every scar, every hidden hurt was part of your becoming. Healing begins the moment you stop hiding from your story and dare to read it aloud to yourself. Your voice may shake, but that trembling is the sound of chains loosening. A shadow you've avoided begins to soften the instant you meet its eyes. It is not there to ruin you. It has been guarding the very parts of you that didn't survive in the open. Each page you turn in your own story is a step toward integration, a reminder that even the darkest chapters still belong to the same book, the book of you. The shadow waits patiently, keeping safe the parts of you that once felt too dangerous to reveal. Jung saw this not as cruelty, but as protection, the psyche's way of storing what you weren't yet ready to carry. But as you grow, the shadow begins to feel heavy, not safe. It whispers through restlessness, through repeated mistakes, through the ache of something missing. That whisper is the invitation. The moment you stop treating it like an intruder and start treating it like an old friend is the moment you begin to heal. Every locked memory is a door. You may have spent years walking past it, convincing yourself it's better left shut, but the key has been in your pocket the whole time. Unlocking it doesn't mean drowning in the past. It means retrieving the pieces of yourself that have been waiting inside. Jung believed the unconscious is generous. It returns these memories in symbols, dreams, and sudden moments of recognition. Each one is a threshold, and the choice is always yours, to keep walking past or to finally step through. Pain revisited with awareness is no longer the same pain. Without awareness, it commands. With awareness, it teaches. Jung knew that to face suffering is to give it a new role, not as the villain in your story, but as a mentor who speaks in riddles. This is not romanticizing pain, it's recognizing that even grief carries information, even heartbreak carries direction. The past doesn't have to keep cutting you. It can become the whetstone on which your courage is sharpened. Sometimes you must stand still in the middle of the storm, not to endure it passively, but to listen. The winds carry messages from every stage of your life. Fragments of conversations, moments you forgot you remembered, the sound of your own younger voice. Jung believed these storms are inner weather, and that meeting them with presence changes their nature. You realize that not all storms are meant to be escaped. Some are meant to be understood. And in that understanding, the sky begins to clear. Old wounds may open again, not because you failed, but because you're ready. Now you have steadier hands, hands that can stitch with gold instead of thread. This is the art of kintsugi, mending the broken not to hide the cracks, but to honor them. Jung saw these golden seams as symbols of individuation, the visible proof that healing has taken place. The wound is no longer a weak point. It is the strongest place in you, the one that has been reforged by both pain and patience. Growth is rarely a leap. More often, it's a slow spiral, a path that revisits familiar pain from a new angle each time. You might think you've gone in circles, but each return is higher, clearer. Jung described this as the psyche's way of integrating layer by layer. Progress feels subtle until one day you notice the view has changed. You are still you, but you are not the same you who first stepped onto this path. That is the quiet magic of true transformation. Your shadow will not leave until it has been heard. You can try to outrun it, outwork it, outthink it, but it will follow, not to trap you, but to be acknowledged. Jung called this making the darkness conscious. The moment you turn and listen, its form begins to shift. The monster becomes a messenger, the weight becomes a guide, and in listening, you realize the shadow's persistence was never about punishment, it was about love. The kind that waits forever for you to come home. Even silence can be heavy. It holds unsaid words, unfinished grief, the breath you never released. Jung understood that silence is not always peace. Sometimes it is storage. The body stores it in muscles, in posture, in the way you breathe without noticing. To release it, you don't have to break the silence with noise. You have to fill it with presence. Sit with it. Hear what it's been holding for you. Then let it go, gently, like setting down a bag you forgot you were carrying. To face the darkness is to remember you already carry a lantern. You may have thought the light was gone, but it's been with you all along. Small, steady, patient. Jung believed symbols like this appear when we're ready to see them. The lantern is not rescue from outside, it's your own awareness, your own willingness to step forward. The darkness may still surround you, but it no longer blinds you. One step at a time, by your own light, you move. The past does not vanish. It walks beside you, quietly influencing each step until you turn to meet it. Jung saw the past not as an enemy, but as a companion in need of recognition. When you finally look, you may find it's been holding something for you. A truth, a memory, a gift. You cannot change what happened, but you can change the relationship you have with it. And in that shift, the past becomes less of a weight and more of a guide. Suffering changes when you allow it to write new chapters instead of repeating old ones. Jung believed that if you do not engage with your wounds, they become scripts you unconsciously perform again and again. But the moment you intervene, the moment you choose a different line, you begin to author your own story. The wounds may remain, but it no longer directs the plot. You hold the pen now. The pieces you thought were lost are still waiting where you set them down. They may be covered in dust, hidden in the corners of your memory, but they are intact. Jung saw these as aspects of the self that were exiled for survival. Returning to them is not regression, it is restoration. When you gather them back into yourself, you become fuller, stronger, and more capable of living the life they were meant to be part of all along. Your heart knows the way home, but it needs your courage to begin the journey. Fear may tell you you're not ready, that the road is too dangerous, but Jung knew that readiness is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to move anyway. Each step you take toward wholeness proves the fear wrong, not by denying it, but by walking alongside it until it fades. Fear may stand at the door, but beyond it lies freedom. The door itself is not locked. It only looks that way from a distance. Jung's work reminds us that the threshold is often the most intimidating part, because it asks for trust. Once you step through, you see that what you feared was only the shadow of the unknown, and that the unknown holds more light than you imagined. Every scar is a line in the map of how you found yourself. Jung saw scars as living symbols, proof that you have been broken and remade, and that the remaking is what gave you your shape. They are not signs of weakness, but of history. When you trace them, you are tracing the story of your survival. And in knowing that story, you learn how to navigate the roads ahead. You cannot choose what happened, but you can choose how it shapes you. Jung believed this choice is where freedom begins, in deciding whether the past will be a prison or a foundation. The events remain the same, but their meaning can change. And in changing the meaning, you change the way they live in you. The shadow is not your enemy, it is the part of you still waiting to be loved. Jung taught that love, in this sense, means acceptance without denial and without indulgence. It means sitting with what is, without needing it to be anything else. The moment the shadow feels this kind of love, it stops fighting you. It starts helping you find the rest of yourself. Wholeness is not perfection. It is the embrace of every part of yourself. Jung never spoke of becoming flawless. He spoke of becoming whole. This means welcoming the contradictions, the mess, the mistakes, the brilliance, and the beauty that make you who you are. It means holding them all in oneself without needing to throw any away. When you finally see all of yourself, you realize you were never truly broken. You were in pieces, yes, but they were always part of the same whole. Jung believed that this realization is the turning point, the place where the work shifts from survival to creation. From here, you no longer fear the shadow, because you understand it, and in understanding it, you understand yourself. Some truths only arrive when you've grown enough to hold them. They wait in the corners of your life like unopened letters, their messages sealed until you have the strength, the perspective, or the compassion to read them. Jung believed the psyche is wise in its timing, offering revelations not when we demand them, but when we can survive their weight. When they finally arrive, they don't just answer questions, they open new ones, inviting you to keep unfolding into the person you are becoming. Healing is not the erasure of pain, but its transformation. Jung saw suffering as raw material, heavy, unshaped, and difficult to carry, that can, through awareness, become strength, insight, and empathy. The events don't vanish, they change form. Like alchemy turning lead into gold, the process is slow, often messy, and sometimes invisible until the moment you realize you are different. What once weakened you now makes you capable of standing in storms you never thought you could survive. Your shadow holds the map to the gold you seek. It's a strange guide, pointing you toward the very places you've avoided, the feelings you've resisted, the memories you've buried. Jung believed that the treasure and the dragon live in the same cave. You cannot have one without facing the other. Every step into the shadow is a step toward reclaiming a part of yourself. And when you've walked far enough, you may discover the map was not leading you anywhere new at all. It was leading you back to yourself. Every ending you feared is also a doorway in disguise. Jung knew that what feels like loss is often a threshold, the space between what was and what will be. Endings strip away the familiar, sometimes painfully, but they also clear the ground for what's next. If you stand at the doorway long enough, you'll see that it opens not into emptiness, but into possibility. And the courage it takes to step through is the same courage that will carry you into your next chapter.
Some shadows don't announce themselves with dramatic dreams or visions. They hide in the quietest habits, the ones so woven into daily life that you barely notice them. Jung understood the unconscious rarely shouts. It prefers the safety of disguise. You might think you're simply being careful or playing it safe, but look closer. Sometimes that's fear wearing the mask of caution. And fear has a way of convincing you that comfort is safety, even when it's actually stagnation. The question Jung would have you ask is simple, but difficult. Are you truly protecting yourself, or have you built walls that keep out not only danger, but life itself? Those walls might have been necessary once, but now, they might just be a prison you've mistaken for a fortress. We imagine breakthroughs as lightning bolts, sudden, dramatic revelations. But Jung knew the unconscious often works in whispers, a fleeting heaviness during a conversation, an unexplained resistance to saying yes, a strange feeling of relief when a plan falls through. These tiny ripples are often the first signs that something deeper is speaking. They're easy to dismiss, and most people do, too busy looking for fireworks to notice the candlelight. But if you can slow down enough to follow them, you may find yourself at the threshold of a door you didn't know existed. That doorway might open into an old memory, a forgotten passion, or an unspoken truth you've been circling for years. Jung would tell you, honor the whispers. They're the language of the unconscious, and if you keep listening, those small hints can lead to the largest changes in your life. Some wounds don't begin with you. Jung called this the collective unconscious, a deep reservoir of human memory and experience, stretching beyond your individual life. Sometimes the fears you carry were never truly yours. They were whispered down through generations, passed along not in words, but in ways of reacting, protecting, and surviving. You might feel them as inexplicable anxieties, sudden shame, or patterns you can't seem to break. They didn't start with you, but they can end with you. To heal these inherited wounds is to step outside a loop that's been running for decades, maybe centuries. And in doing so, you not only free yourself, you shift something in the lineage itself. Jung saw this as sacred work. You become the one who turns toward the pain your family avoided, and in facing it, you plant the seed of a different story for those who come after. When you turn away from the shadow, you also turn away from the gold it guards. Jung often spoke of myths where treasure is hidden behind a dragon, a perfect metaphor for the psyche. The dragon is fear, the dragon is pain, the dragon is self-doubt. It looks dangerous because it's meant to keep you away. But here's the twist. The treasure isn't behind it, it's underneath it, woven into the very thing you're afraid to face. In the language of the unconscious, your greatest obstacles often conceal your deepest gifts. What you avoid holds not only your discomfort, but also your transformation. Jung would say, don't just slay the dragon, understand it. Sometimes the dragon was guarding the treasure for you all along, waiting for the moment you were strong enough to claim it. We've been taught to think of strength as resistance, holding firm, never bending, never yielding. But Jung saw a different kind of strength, the strength in surrender. Not the surrender of defeat, but of trust. Trust that your psyche knows where you need to go, even if your conscious mind doesn't. This is the surrender of loosening your grip on a life you've outgrown. It's the surrender of allowing the process to shape you without constantly trying to shape it back. And sometimes it's the surrender of letting go of the version of yourself you've worked so hard to maintain in order to step into the person you were always meant to be. Jung knew this wasn't weakness. It's one of the hardest things you can do, to stop controlling and start allowing, to be led into transformation. Every person you meet is a mirror. Some reflect your best qualities back to you, others show you the wounds you've tried to hide. Jung's idea of projection explains this. The things that irritate us most and the things that inspire us most are often unclaimed pieces of ourselves. When you meet someone who stirs a strong reaction, positive or negative, it's worth asking, what part of me are they reflecting? This isn't about blame, it's about discovery. The more you explore these reflections, the more whole you become. Some mirrors will be uncomfortable, showing the parts of you that are still unhealed. Others will be radiant, showing potential you haven't yet allowed yourself to live. Jung believed that the world is a hall of mirrors, and the more courage you have to look into them, the more of yourself you will see. Silence is not emptiness. In Jung's own journey, long stretches of solitude became the forge where insight took shape. In a world that glorifies constant motion, stillness can feel unsettling, even wrong. But in that stillness, the unconscious stirs. When you stop filling every moment with noise, the quiet becomes a space where hidden truths can rise to the surface. At first, that voice may tremble, faint as a candle flicker in a vast room. But if you keep listening, without judgment, without rushing, it grows stronger. Jung would say that silence is not a void, it's a container. It's the space where the inner dialogue becomes possible, where the parts of you that have waited in the shadows finally find the courage to speak. Not every shadow is heavy. Some are light-starved. Your creativity, your joy, your boldness, all pushed aside to survive. Jung knew that repression doesn't only happen to pain, it happens to brilliance too. Perhaps you stopped singing because someone once laughed. Perhaps you stopped writing because you were told to be practical. These lost joys are just as real as your wounds, and they live in the shadow until you reclaim them. At first they may feel awkward, like speaking a language you haven't used in years. But the more you welcome them back, the more they color your world again. Jung would remind you, wholeness is not only the integration of pain, it's the restoration of joy. To ignore that is to heal only halfway. The psyche has its seasons. Winter is the time of stillness, of turning inward. Spring, the time of renewal. Jung believed that even our darkest seasons have meaning. They are the fertile soil where transformation begins. In winter, it may feel like nothing is happening, but beneath the surface, roots are reaching deeper, preparing for growth. If you rush the process, you risk uprooting what's still taking hold. Trusting this cycle means respecting your own timing. Some seasons will feel abundant, others stripped bare. Both are necessary. Jung would tell you, you are not failing in your winter. You are gathering the strength that will feed your spring. Every shadow wants two things, to be seen and to belong. Jung's work reminds us that healing is not about erasing parts of ourselves, but about giving them a place in our inner home. The exiled emotions, the hidden desires, the disowned traits, all of them are knocking at the door. If you open that door with curiosity rather than judgment, you begin to feel something rare, wholeness. It doesn't mean every part will agree with the others, or that the chaos disappears. It means you no longer have to pretend that parts of you don't exist. Jung would say that belonging begins inside, and once you give it to yourself, no one can take it away. Your mind is a house with many rooms. Some are bright and familiar, others have been locked for years. Jung would tell you that shadow work is not about tearing down the house, it's about finding the keys. Every door you open expands the space in which you can live, breathe, and be yourself. At first, the locked rooms may feel cold, dusty, or even hostile. But as you air them out and let in light, they become part of your home again. And the more rooms you reclaim, the less you feel the need to hide from yourself. Jung believed that the journey is not about moving to a new house. It's about inhabiting all of the one you already have. Fear is often mistaken for wisdom. I just know it won't work, we say, without ever trying. Jung believed fear should be consulted but not obeyed. It's a messenger, not a ruler. Fear carries information about risk, about readiness, but it doesn't carry the whole truth. Sometimes fear speaks in the voice of the past, warning you about dangers that no longer exist. The challenge is to tell the difference between fear that protects and fear that imprisons. Jung would advise, listen to fear with respect, thank it for its concern, and then choose your path with your whole self, not just the part that's afraid. Some truths don't fit into words. Jung turned to images and symbols when language fell short. You might feel this when a piece of music makes you cry for reasons you can't explain, or when a dream lingers for days. The unconscious speaks in this symbolic, wordless way because it bypasses the logical mind and speaks directly to the soul. To engage with a symbol is to begin a conversation with your deeper self, one that may take months or years to unfold. Jung would say, don't rush to solve the symbol. Let it work on you in its own time, shaping your understanding from the inside out. Your shadow is not in a hurry. It will wait until you are ready to meet it, even if that takes decades. Jung believed readiness is not about being fearless, but about being willing. Willingness is the crack in the armor where light begins to enter. And once you're willing, the shadow doesn't need to force its way in. It can approach gently. This is why people sometimes meet life-changing truths in the quietest moments, long after they've stopped searching. Jung knew that the unconscious moves at the pace of trust, and trust cannot be rushed. The things we hide from others are often the same things we hide from ourselves. Jung saw self-deception as one of the most stubborn barriers to growth. We create stories to avoid pain, but those stories eventually become cages. It takes courage to admit, this narrative I've been living, it's not the whole truth. The moment you do, you create space for a new story to begin. Jung believed that truth is rarely comfortable at first, but it always expands your freedom. And every time you trade illusion for reality, you take another step toward wholeness. Patterns repeat until they are understood. Jung called this the compulsion to repeat, the psyche's attempt to bring unresolved wounds back into awareness. Each repetition is an opportunity to choose differently. You might think life is punishing you, but more often, it's presenting you with another chance to break the cycle. The scenery changes, new faces, new jobs, new cities, but the emotional script stays the same until you rewrite it. Jung would remind you, the repetition is not the enemy. It's the messenger, showing you exactly where the work is. And once you learn the lesson, the pattern no longer needs to return. The unconscious does not forget. Even the things you've tried hardest to bury still live in you, shaping your choices from the shadows. Jung believed repression doesn't erase pain, it simply changes its form. It may return as anxiety, as perfectionism, as the inability to trust. But the unconscious doesn't bring these patterns back to punish you. It brings them back to be healed. When you face what you've avoided, you give it form and name. And what has a name can be understood. Jung knew that healing begins the moment we stop pretending that what hurt us never happened. Your dreams are not random. Jung saw them as letters from the unconscious, written in the language of symbols. They reveal what the waking mind has overlooked or refused to see. A dream about being chased might be your own ambition driving you too hard. A dream about falling could be your fear of losing control. Jung advised writing down dreams upon waking, before the details fade. Over time, you may notice patterns, recurring places, objects, or figures, all clues to the deeper story unfolding within you. The more you listen to these messages, the more fluent you become in the language of your own psyche. Growth often feels like loss at first. Jung recognized that in becoming who you are, you must also let go of who you were. This can be painful, even when the old self was built on limitations. There is a mourning process for the familiar habits, identities, and roles that once kept you safe. But safety is not the same as aliveness. Jung would say that the self you are becoming cannot emerge until you release the self you have been. It's not betrayal, it's evolution. You carry the lessons of the old self into the new, but you no longer let it steer your life. When you feel envy, pay attention. Jung believed envy is a map to what you desire but have disowned. It points toward qualities, experiences, or freedoms that your shadow has claimed for itself. Instead of shaming yourself for feeling envy, ask, what does this person's life or behavior reveal about my own longing? Often the very thing you admire from a distance is something you are capable of creating for yourself, if you're willing to step beyond your current limits. Envy, seen through this lens, is not a flaw but a signal, an arrow pointing you toward the life you could be living. The psyche resists shortcuts. Jung warned that rushing inner work leads to shallow change. True transformation requires patience, the kind of patience that allows a seed to become a tree, not just a sprout. When you push too fast, the shadow retreats further, waiting for a safer moment to emerge. Real growth happens when you move at the speed of trust with yourself. Some days will feel like breakthroughs, others like setbacks. Both are part of the same unfolding. Jung would remind you, the goal is not to get there quickly, but to arrive deeply. You cannot heal in the same environment that wounded you. Jung understood that while insight comes from within, change often requires a shift in the outer world. This might mean finding new relationships, new spaces, or simply new boundaries in familiar places. When you remove yourself from the conditions that kept the wound alive, the psyche can finally breathe. The inner and outer environments work together. The soil must be healthy for the seed to grow. Jung would say, healing is not just about what happens in your mind, but also where your mind is allowed to rest. Anger is a boundary being crossed. Jung believed that anger, like fear, is a messenger. It tells you where your limits are, where your dignity has been ignored, or where your values have been violated. Many are taught to suppress anger, but repressed anger turns inward, becoming bitterness or depression. The goal is not to lash out, but to listen. What is your anger trying to protect? When you honor its message without letting it control your actions, anger becomes a guide to self-respect and a tool for setting the boundaries that keep you whole. What you admire in others is often what you have yet to claim in yourself. Jung described this as the golden shadow, the unowned brilliance that you project outward. You might see courage in a friend, creativity in a stranger, or resilience in a colleague, qualities that stir something in you. The golden shadow calls you to integrate your gifts, just as the dark shadow calls you to integrate your wounds. Both are parts of the same wholeness. The next time you are deeply moved by someone's light, ask, where in my life am I being invited to shine in the same way? Loneliness is not always a sign that something is wrong. Jung understood that solitude is the birthplace of individuation, the process of becoming fully yourself. There are seasons where you must step away from the crowd to hear your own voice clearly. In that quiet, you may confront fears and doubts that were drowned out by noise, but you will also meet strengths and dreams that could only emerge in stillness. Loneliness, when embraced consciously, transforms into solitude, and solitude into self-possession. Your reactions reveal your wounds. Jung often said that the intensity of an emotional response is a clue to something deeper. If a comment cuts too sharply, if a small rejection feels devastating, it may be touching an old injury that never fully healed. Instead of asking, why did they do this to me? Ask, why did this affect me so strongly? The answer may lead you to an old story still living in your nervous system. Awareness is the first step toward rewriting it, and giving that part of you the care it has long needed. Your inner critic is rarely your own voice. Jung understood that many of our harshest self-judgments are echoes of other people, parents, teachers, peers, internalized until they sound like us. The critic believes it is keeping you safe, but its methods are cruel. To quiet it, you must first separate it from your true self. Ask, whose voice is this? Where did I first hear it? As you recognize it for what it is, a learned defense, not an absolute truth, you gain the power to respond differently. Forgiveness is not the same as reconciliation. Jung would remind you that forgiveness is an internal act, a decision to stop carrying the weight of resentment, regardless of whether the other person changes. Forgiveness frees you from the story in which you are forever the one who was wronged. This doesn't mean you condone the harm. It means you choose to reclaim your energy from it. In doing so, you create space for new narratives to emerge. Creativity is not a luxury, it is a necessity of the soul. Jung viewed creative expression as a direct channel to the unconscious. Whether through painting, writing, music, or movement, creativity allows the psyche to speak in symbols beyond language. You don't have to be an artist to create. You only have to make something that feels alive in your hands. The act itself, not the result, is the medicine. Shadow work is not about becoming flawless, it's about becoming whole. Jung taught that perfection is an illusion, one that keeps us trapped in endless self-judgment. Wholeness means you can hold the paradox, strength and vulnerability, light and darkness, joy and grief. You stop needing to cut yourself into acceptable pieces. Instead, you become a living, breathing contradiction, and in that contradiction you find your truth. Resisting change is often a form of self-protection. Jung observed that when people delay transformation, it's rarely because they don't want to grow. It's because part of them fears what will be lost. Change asks you to release the familiar, even when the familiar is painful. That part of you clinging to the known is not your enemy. It's a younger self that once found safety and stability. Instead of forcing it forward, offer it reassurance. Remind it that growth is not abandonment, and that you will carry its lessons into the new life. When every part of you feels included, change becomes less of a battle and more of a homecoming. Some of your deepest truths will not be believed by others, and that's fine. Jung emphasized individuation, the process of becoming yourself, even if it means no longer fitting into the roles others expect. This path is not about rebellion for its own sake, but about authenticity. When you stop living for external approval, you may lose certain relationships, but you gain a deeper one with yourself. Jung would say the approval of the crowd is fleeting. The approval of the soul lasts a lifetime. The unconscious often speaks first through the body. Jung believed that physical symptoms can sometimes carry symbolic meaning. Tension, fatigue, even illness may mirror unresolved emotional patterns. This doesn't mean every ache is psychological, but it does mean the body and psyche are in constant conversation. Pay attention to where you carry stress, to when exhaustion strikes, to what situations trigger headaches or stomach knots. Each may be an embodied message from the unconscious, asking you to slow down, change course, or release something you've been holding too long. True self-discovery often begins with disillusionment. Jung knew that the collapse of an old belief or identity can feel devastating, but it is also the clearing in which a more authentic self can take root. The moment you see through the story you've been telling yourself is the moment you stand in an open field. At first, that openness feels like loss. In time, it becomes freedom. The old identity served its purpose, but it was never the whole of you. Your inner child is not just a wounded part of you, It is also your source of joy, wonder, and spontaneity. Jung saw reconnecting with this part as essential to wholeness. While shadow work often focuses on healing the pain of the child, it must also reclaim the playfulness and creativity that were lost. Spend time with what delighted you before the world told you who to be. In nurturing that childlike spark, you restore an energy that can't be found anywhere else. Not all endings are failures. Jung believed that when a chapter closes, it's often because the psyche has finished its work there. Holding on out of fear of the unknown can keep you trapped in situations that no longer serve you. Endings create the space for beginnings, though the gap between them can be uncomfortable. Trust that the emptiness will not last forever. It is simply the soil resting before new seeds are planted. Symbols have power because they bypass logic. Jung noticed that a single image, a circle, a tree, a river, can carry layers of meaning that words cannot hold. These symbols speak directly to the unconscious, evoking emotions and insights without explanation. Pay attention to the symbols that appear repeatedly in your life, whether in dreams, art, or even chance encounters. They are signposts from your deeper self, guiding you toward what needs to be understood or integrated. It's tempting to seek constant certainty, but Jung knew that uncertainty is where transformation happens. Certainty keeps you in the known. Uncertainty opens the door to the new. The discomfort of not knowing is a sign you are standing at the edge of change. Instead of rushing to resolve it, allow yourself to be shaped by the questions. Jung would remind you, the right answer is rarely found before the right question has fully worked on you. The masks you wear are not lies. They were once necessary. Jung called these masks the persona, the social face you present to the world. They protect you, help you belong, and serve specific roles. But problems arise when you forget that the mask is not the whole self. Over time, the persona can harden, making it harder to feel alive. The work is not to destroy the mask, but to loosen it, to remember there is a living, breathing soul behind it. You cannot hate a part of yourself into healing. Jung emphasized compassion as the doorway to integration. Criticism deepens division. Compassion creates the safety needed for change. Even the most destructive patterns began as strategies to protect you. When you approach them with understanding instead of contempt, you invite them to evolve. Integration is not force, it is relationship. Life has a rhythm of expansion and contraction. Jung saw these cycles as natural to both nature and the psyche. Expansion brings growth, new opportunities, and outward movement. Contraction calls you inward to rest, reflect, and consolidate. If you expect to be in expansion all the time, you will mistake rest for failure. Honor both. They keep your growth sustainable. The unconscious is not chaos, it has its own order. Jung compared it to a vast ecosystem, with every part serving a role, even the ones we don't understand. The conscious mind may judge certain traits as weeds, but the unconscious sees their place in the whole. When you stop trying to control every part of yourself, you begin to notice the natural intelligence of your inner world.